Nick, right now we have Mr. Daniel Steed.
Yep.
Musco's apprentice.
Yes.
Or Padawan, you could call him.
Depending on which side of the force you're on.
Yeah. So, Dan, welcome to Working Class Nerds.
What do you do at Bioware?
That's a good question. First off, thanks for having me. I'm the community coordinator, and I do a lot of things. Pretty much anything that goes up on our website, our social, any of the launcher promos. I have a good amount of work with all that stuff. I'm not the sole person that works on that, but pretty much from start to finish, I'm involved in that process.
So, do you control Twitter now?
For the most part, it's yes. Twitter is either me or Musco.
So you're the one with all the power.
Oh, I have far too much power, and every single day, as Musco would say, I have a healthy fear whenever I put something out there.
Perfect.
Well, thanks, Dan. We
Thanks,
just
Dan.
wanted to give a little voice to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. I'm going to pass this on to Musco now.
All right. Hey, I'm Marcus.
And I'm Nick.
This is Working Class Nerds.
Cue the intro. That's right, we are Working Class Nerds, the podcast that gives you no information about your favorite information.
Today is Thursday, August 6th, 2019, and you can find this, the Devs Are Back podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Buzzsprout, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. I really got to do more of those.
I know.
They should have one inventory for all of the podcasts.
One inventory to rule them all. You can also find the both of us on Twitter.
I am at MarcusB814.
And I am at Nick Vern, that's Nickvern. In this week's episode, we're talking to Matt Pucevich and Eric Musco from BioWare's SOTOR team to discuss operations and any other group activities in-game.
So, thanks guys for coming on. Musco, thanks for coming back. Matt, welcome to the show. What have you been up to this week, gentlemen?
You want to go first, Matt? You're more important.
You're both important.
Whole lot of Dxun.
Getting our ducks in a row, am I right? First, how long into the podcast are we that I've made this joke?
Nick?
Approximately 45 seconds.
Perfect. Nailed it. New world record for what I don't know, but
for a quickest dad joke on an episode of Working Class Nerds, yes.
For the record, that will be the name of at least one achievement.
Okay.
It's too good. But
So, working on Dxun?
Yeah, getting designs a little finalized, running balance, and also this week I've been sitting in on voice recording for all the transmissions and the wrap requests and stuff like that, since we helped write some of it.
All right. Musco, what have you been doing? Other than telling Dan what to do and you're working him too hard. Just for the record.
least.
Oh, and when is Dan's 1 year anniversary?
Sometime in November, I think.
Okay, so in October, Working Class Nerds is going to start a hashtag. That's hashtag
Hire Dan.
I like
Okay.
it.
I like it. I love it. So about 7.5 hours of my day are bossing Dan around, obviously. And then the other 30 minutes, most of what I've been working on lately is PTS stuff, because we're going to be putting Bounty Hunter up probably tomorrow on PTS. And there's a whole bunch of other changes that I discovered that we're making to some of the itemization things that we'll be putting up tomorrow. So a lot of PTS stuff.
So,
And planning for New York Cantina as well.
whoa. Is it going to be the same weekend as
Comic-Con?
Comic-Con?
Sure is. It's going to be, at least from everything I know right now, it will be that Friday night.
Wow, that's the first cantina I ever went to.
Sweet.
A couple years ago. Sweet.
Awesome. You gonna
All
come?
right.
You guys gonna come this year?
Yes.
I believe I am also, so as long as I'm free.
No,
Love
you're
it.
coming.
You're free.
I don't have class on Fridays, so I'll be good.
Done.
Done. Working Class Nerds will be there.
So, Nick, what have you been up to?
So, similar to last episode, I've been playing a whole lot of Dragon Ball FighterZ.
And getting your ass kicked by Eri?
No, damn it. I'm training. I'm in the hyperbolic time chamber training so that I can beat Eri next time we play.
Huh.
In her vicious button mashing skills.
Spirit bomb.
Spirit bomb. I also have some Siege sprinkled in. I started playing Siege with the new with that Astro controller finally, and I actually really like it.
Ooh, the custom one.
The custom one,
Dude,
yeah.
that thing is sick.
I swapped it to the Xbox controller analog stick formation. It's way better.
Wait, so you're confirming that the Xbox controller is better than the PlayStation controller?
Yes.
Okay, moving on. So, did you find it not easier to play Siege because Siege is so tactical, but did you find it to be like more fluid with the controller and more comfortable?
Yeah. So the thing I enjoy the most is the triggers being a short
clicky?
pull.
Clicky.
Yeah, a lot. They're not quite clicky like with the modded controllers from Monster that we saw. Evil controllers. Those I actually prefer because that was almost like making it like a mouse click. That would be awesome, but I feel like I'd end up accidentally shooting a whole bunch of times. But this, even with the shortened trigger pull on the Astro controller, it's way better in Siege because a lot of times, like if you're holding an angle or something, that split second of like you pulling the trigger versus them pulling the trigger, well, it's the difference between them dying or you dying. So that I've noticed I've gotten kills where I might not have before, like several times because of that.
That's sweet.
Which is awesome. That's huge. That's what you want from when you're getting an upgraded controller. Talking about Dragon Ball Fighter Z, I've been playing the story because in the story that's where you get the tutorial and all that stuff.
Sure.
So you actually know how to fight. There's like a little story that ties it in with like you being able to see all the characters and stuff,
right?
Versus you playing a video game, just like replaying the show's story. So I finished the Saiyan Warrior arc, which is not really. It's like you from the good guy's perspective, and now I get to go play as the bad guys from their perspective, and it's pretty cool to see like the other side of the story. It's not so cut and dry as you might think. And then there's another story arc that I don't know what it is after this that I got to finish too. So it's pretty cool to be able to play as the bad guys and like see things from their point of view, and they're not quite as bad.
Is it well written?
I think so. It's a silly little like you're kind of shoehorning it like a story into like another
fighting game,
into a
almost like
fighting game.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's not like War and Peace or whatever, but it's definitely it's passable and I like it and I'm enjoying it for sure.
Perfect.
So a little work frustration. I attempted to pick up a couple of 12-hour shifts to add on like per week.
Sure.
But I was only approved. Like you request the shift, and then I was only approved for the first 4 hours. So it's kind of annoying that I have to wake up and go get into work for 7 a.m. and then just leave 4 hours later.
Yeah, that's.
It's like not even worth doing the laundry for the scrubs. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I mean, and it almost feels like what's the point? Like, yeah, right. Extra money is extra money, but why wouldn't they just schedule you for the whole shift?
I think so. What it is on our scheduler, you can see shifts are open in 4-hour chunks. So there was like, we need 4 techs from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then I only need 1 extra tech from 11 to 3. And
so they probably took the most experienced one to keep them there all day.
Yeah, basically. And then they gave me because they needed more people early in the day. They just said, okay, you can have the little 4-hour chunk. And it basically sounds like someone else asked for that 12-hour chunk, and they give it to somebody else.
Yeah, more experience.
Probably.
What it's like, do you want the first-year intern, or do you want the fourth-year intern?
Yeah.
Right.
Same deal.
Okay.
In some Star Wars-y stuff, I finished the Darth Palpatine book. I've been listening to it on...
Darth Plagueis.
Darth Plagueis, sorry.
So good.
Yeah, that was excellent. I really enjoyed that. And then
now, are you reading it or doing the Audible?
Audible.
Oh yeah, it's the way to do it.
Because then you get all the different voice inflections and stuff. It's not Mark Thompson for that one. It's
Jonathan Davis.
Jonathan, yeah, he does a great job too.
It's so good.
If you're at all a fan, definitely. I mean, especially if you've listened to Darth Bane in that series, I think they tie in with a lot of the other books.
Yeah, well, the Darth Plagueis book is nice because it's like pre-episode 1 and it ends into episode 1.
Right.
So like you think Palpatine is
like running the show.
Yeah, but he's really not. He's still in the shadows in episode 1.
Right.
And then he finally
like emerges kind of.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Well, if you've seen
he
episode,
survives.
Right.
Whoa,
indeed.
Anyways, and then I see you're reading Thrawn.
I am. I started the Thrawn trilogy. I'm almost done with the first book. It's wicked good.
So
there's a trilogy and a duology or whatever, right?
Wait, no. So are you reading Heir to the Empire or Thrawn?
I think it's just Thrawn.
Okay, so that's the canon Thrawn.
Right, and then the Legends Thrawn is a 2-part book.
Is 3 books.
No, 2-part.
No, it's 3.
No, it's 2. It's a
Heir to the Empire is number 1, and then it's
Okay,
like
now-
the Hand of Thrawn, and then it's something else.
I gotta look in my library now.
I've read them all. Heir to the Empire is the best Star Wars book I've ever read. Read and listened to.
I think so. What I read online was the trilogy is set. It came out later, but it was set earlier than the 2-part series that came later. That was like the non-canon one about Thrawn.
Well, but Heir to the Empire is the first book
That was ever written, yeah.
Yeah, they might not be saying that's the trilogy, but that was the first book, and then the second and third book was like the Hand of Thrawn or something like that.
Okay.
There was 3 books with Thrawn in it, so maybe they're just saying it was 2. But Heir to the Empire is the best book I've ever read.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Thrawn series, the first book Timothy Zahn did of the canon, the Thrawn self-titled is really good. Yep, that one.
That's the
yep,
one.
That's it's really good.
Yeah.
The second one is where he like teams up with Darth Vader.
Yeah.
It's pretty good because you're switching back and forth through time with Anakin and Darth Vader.
Right.
And
yeah, because in
Thrawn-
this book, I haven't finished it yet. This book, he talks about how he did stuff with Anakin in
Yeah.
Clone Wars, but I don't know what yet.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool because Thrawn's
so
a
cool.
smart dude, and like
It's cool to see him with Vader.
Well, I don't want to spoil it for you.
Dude, I just got so pumped that I'm gonna have Vader in the book with Thrawn.
Yeah, but just now, think about how smart Thrawn is. Now, do you think Thrawn is going to see even though Vader's in his suit, but like he's going to act like Anakin maybe, and he's going to be like, "Man, I know this dude."
Yeah, he's gonna be like, I know him, but like, what the fuck? Why is he so different?
Right, and like in the first Thrawn book, are you at the point where the Emperor Thrawn met Darth Vader?
No, not yet.
Okay,
So that's where I'm at. I'm on. I think I've got a half hour left.
Oh, you should have.
No, I didn't hear Thrawn. I mean, I know Thrawn knows that he served with Anakin, but he didn't.
No, but
Not
like
with Darth Vader.
Yeah, Darth Vader comes out and they like introduce each other.
Nope.
Maybe it's at the end. I don't know.
Yeah.
But at some point, Thrawn meets Vader.
Okay. No, not yet.
Is he a Grand Admiral yet?
No, he's just a regular admiral. I know he gets the top of the Navy basically, but
Well, yeah. It's because he's the smartest dude ever.
yeah, like no, he just finally met with. This is spoilers, so skip ahead a couple minutes. If you don't
No,
wanna read this.
that's
The
a
book's been
3-year-old
out-
book. Yeah,
It's
can
been out for a
spoil it.
while, but he just met with Night Swan and tried to recruit him to the Chiss ascendancy,
Mhm.
and that's basically where I'm at. I think I'm a little bit past that, but
Vanto is the man.
yeah, he's currently a Commander Vanto.
Yeah. He's the man. Just wait. So I started listening to the newest one, which is called Thrawn Treason.
Oh, the third one.
Yep,
in the
it just
trilogy?
came out. Yep,
Yeah,
it just
I bought
came
it
out
too.
Yeah, so I'm deep in that.
Yeah.
Like I haven't listened to any podcasts. Thank God, some of my podcasts only come out like every 2 weeks.
Right.
So like I don't even feel like I'm cheating on them.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, they're good.
I'm so into this.
And
right
I met
now.
Timothy Zahn
Did you really?
at the New York Comic-Con
Holy shit.
Star Wars Cantina with Zen and Carrie.
Wow.
Carrie like
Did you
saw
buy
my
vodka shots with?
No,
Zen?
but Nick was like, Carrie was like, you got to hide it, Marcus. It's poking out. And I was like, what do you mean? This is Timothy Zahn, and he signed my Chiss Ascendancy poster.
That's
Because he created the Chiss.
Oh, did you really?
Yep.
When he wrote the first Thrawn
Heir to
books?
the Empire.
That's cool.
The Chiss are because of Timothy Zahn.
That's such a cool species.
Mhm.
So, anyways, I'm balls deep in the Thrawn books.
Okay.
So, Marcus, what have you been up to?
I'm going to go really, really quick.
Yeah.
Because I really want to get into this interview that we,
Have queued up?
yes. Oh, man. It's so good.
It's really good.
And I'm doing this because everybody listening is just like, I'm not even listening to what Marcus. They're probably skipping 30 seconds at a time right to the cue point.
Until they hear the other voices.
Yeah, till they hear the other voices. Anyways, I've been doing a lot of Datacron runs between the mandatory fun night during the Remembrance Week, the past mandatory fun night this past Tuesday. We did more Datacrons, which is cool because I don't have them all. The Death Star Troopers beat Hard Mode Dread Palace.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I lost my mind on Friday or Thursday at work when I recruited Nick to come work.
Oh, boy.
and they were moving cabinets, and like I couldn't do it myself,
Yeah.
and they weren't doing it like I do it.
We didn't. We were walking side by side instead of front to back or something. And
Something
Marcus was-
stupid, and I like lost it and was like, I can't handle this because I can't use my arm. So I called Carrie on the travel and said on the travel to the job site to drop off the cabinets, and I said, Carrie, find a place to go. We're going away for a few days. She's like, what? I was like, just find a place. So anyways, we went to Jay Peak, Vermont, which is 17 minutes driving, which is really like 2 miles, but you have to drive around to the Canadian border.
So it's way up there.
Yeah, I've never seen stars the way I saw those stars.
Oh, I bet. That's got to be incredible.
Yeah. So it was awesome family time, but at one night, I decided to hike the mountain in the pitch black, no flashlight, except on my phone, but I didn't use it because I was too busy staring at the stars.
That's basically worthless anyway when it's that dark.
Well, no, it would kind
It'd
of
light up like your feet, but
Well,
not. It wouldn't
okay.
like project very
I was
far.
climbing a mountain near Canada in the middle of the woods. I've never heard bug sounds the way I did.
Oh,
And
God,
all I
bet.
could think about is I know what a seal feels like when a great white is preying them because they're just floating through the water like, oh, da 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 da, and the shark's like, yeah.
Bitch, you have no
all
idea.
I was thinking about is I'm gonna die on this mountain. I don't have a flashlight. I don't have a bat or nothing, and some animal could just come out and thrash me,
Yeah. I mean,
And-
thankfully we don't have. Well, there's bears up there.
dude. There's mountain lions. There's everything. Think about,
I don't
dude.
think there's mountain lions in
are-
the Northeast.
Dude,
I thought that was more
it's
a
the
Western
Canadian border. Canadians are crazy. They have crazy animals living in there. There's nothing but, dude.
animal. I think elk.
All right, so it
moose,
was 70
bears.
degrees there,
But I think bears are probably the biggest issue.
Nick. It was 70 degrees there. Okay,
Yeah.
they get snow 11 months a year. 1 month a year, it's 70 degrees.
So all the animals are out on the prowl.
Yes, it's mating season, killing season, and human eating season.
Marcus eating season.
So at one point, I got to like the first like road cliff
Yeah.
in the mountain, and I stopped, looked up at the stars, and then I saw how far the hotel was, and I was like,
that's
better
too far
go-
for me to run. If
I was
something's
like, yeah,
chasing
I
me.
better go back to the dude, and it's all rocks,
Right.
and I'm like, I'd die if I had to run.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I might as well go back to the hotel because I'm gonna get eaten tonight. So I did, but the stars were incredible. I've never seen stars like that before.
Have you been playing any games?
Oh, dude. So Death Star Trooper needs your help. We are 7 of 10 clears on hard mode.
Uh-huh.
So the options are Temple of Sacrifice, Ravagers,
Or-
Gods from the Machine hard mode. All those are hard mode actually. And or go kill some like the Colossal Monolith or something. So if you guys think you can come up with what the Death Star Trooper should do next, let us know because those next 3 ops are going to be really hard. Anyway, I am going to contact a counselor friend that we know.
Yep.
Because I have a Switch addiction.
Oh boy.
Do you know how many games I've bought in the last like week?
How many?
Maybe like 2 weeks, maybe
How-
6.
How 6 games?
Yeah,
So
October.
you have what 8 now?
Yeah,
And you had to switch for a month?
yeah, dude. But I won't. I haven't put any other game in there except
Breath of the Wild.
yeah, because I love it. And yeah. Last thing I want to say is it was pretty sweet. It was pretty sweet to have Dan Steed do our intro for us.
Yeah, that was cool.
It was nice to put a name to the guy who is
Posting all the stuff for SOTOR.
everything. Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it.
So do we have any SOTOR news?
In SOTOR news,
Outside of the interview.
so we have confirmed that the PTS will be back up tomorrow.
Yep.
With
Which class is getting updated?
the Bounty Hunter, so you'll be able to test the Bounty Hunter.
That's sweet.
And yeah, and just so you guys know, if you don't test the server when it gets released, like or get involved in the forums, you're not really helping because they need your help.
They need the feedback.
So on August 2nd, they posted, Eric posted in the forums about they're deploying some PTS updates, and it's for operations. scaling, but I wanted Nick to read first some context.
Sure. So it says, "Hey folks, we're working on deploying a new patch to PTS, which will up the difficulty a bit for group content using our scaling tech. Please be sure to swing back on after the patch and let us know what you think of the new balance. For some context, here are our goals for difficulties for operations in Onslaught. Story mode. This should be easy. An entry-level difficulty for players. Should be puggable without the need for voice comms. Okay. Veteran. Starting to be a challenge for groups, even coordinated ones. Still possible in experienced pugs, but more likely to be completed by coordinated groups or guilds."
So basically, they're saying you're going to need comms and it's going to be tough.
Right.
And I know the story mode to hard mode jump is ridiculous.
Right. So then master mode is going to be the hardest content in the game, meant for veteran and skilled players with heavy coordination.
So I wish they would have put meant for elitist in skilled players.
Right.
Because and there's certain people that say that, you just can't suck.
Suck less.
Yeah, suck less, but it's ridiculous. Anyways, as we said that,
Go ahead.
in guild news, in the last episode I talked about Remembrance Day. Well, it happened last week, and it was on August 2nd. That is a day where the guild takes a day to remember all the guildies / people that we all care about in real life who have passed and gone on to became one with the Force.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really special event for me. And actually, it was I lost my grandma. My grandma.
Not our grandma.
My grandma.
Right.
This year. And so, hearing people talk about, people who they were close to them that passed, I really got choked up this year. And it happened. We do it on Alderaan and, the Dxun Mountains. Mm-hmm. And it's just a beautiful view. And it's, so serene. And, I broke down. I was crying. And I missed her so much. But it's a really special event for the guild. And that's why they do it.
Yeah. It was cool. So, if all this sounds fun to you, go to aie-guild.org, get our Discord info, and ask for a guild invite. Whether you play SOTOR or any of the other games that we play, we'd love to have you.
I don't actually care that you have to pee, because I want to get into this interview, right
now. We'll be right back.
Are we back yet?
And we're back. So today we're discussing operations in Star Wars The Old Republic with none other than the devs. So we've got Matt Pucevich and Eric Musco here.
As we didn't know that already.
I know.
Do I have to say what I did again?
No, I'm just being thorough.
Nick is very, very, very thorough. Nick, do you want to start the questions?
Sure. So I think first one's for Matt. How do you go about starting to make an operation or raid? Is there a certain something you do to get a spark of creativity or where you want to go with one? Or how does that process work when you're starting from scratch to make an operation?
Usually it's going to start one of two ways. Sometimes it's narratively driven because, we know the story arc for the expansion, so that pretty well informs what the operation or operations, ought to be. Sometimes it's a little more open-ended. For 6.0, that was actually the case, and so we started to think about different types of things that we could do and the type of feel that we wanted to have in the operation. Part of what made us settle on Dxun specifically is that we felt like it was time to have another kind of fun operation, like we did with Ravagers. Ravagers was a little sillier in tone. We've been pretty super serious for a while, so every now and again we want to bounce back to that. And so Dxun's going to be a little more zany in terms of what's going on.
So now you mentioned the Ravagers. Are any of the bosses going to be as mechanics driven as Master and Blaster?
There's going to be such a...
Can confirm there are mechanics?
Yes, I can't confirm there are mechanics, but...
Well, whenever I hear the Ravagers, I just go, "Arr!"
Yeah, Marcus
they're
also...
They're such an adorable duo, though.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that that we had a way that publicly you'd be able to play. Like, we've done early playtest stuff of Dxun to be able to have you guys play those early versions just to see the insanity of just like, I put the wrong number in a table, and so we're spawning 70 times more ads than they're supposed to be. It just things that aren't supposed to happen.
It's like,
you can.
There's a recursive loop in the logic on this boss, so his ability is just recasting itself.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
There's some good stuff in there.
So we're confirming that there is mechanics. Okay, moving on.
Yes, there are mechanics. They're going to be, like, in terms of difficulty, because Dxun Machine was designed to be a bit of an outlier difficulty-wise.
And to break all of us?
We made that with the purpose of sort of pushing that upper boundary. Well, it came out in a context where we hadn't made any, nightmare-specific content. Like, the true bleeding edge of, like, the gear and skill cap players hadn't had anything that was really squarely aimed at them for so long that we felt like it was appropriate to take a stab at it. And so we did that, and I think it turned out well, but it's not the type of thing you can do all the time, nor should you.
Right.
This operation is going to be not nearly that intricate. I'm not saying there won't be parts of it that may have some mechanics that layer over themselves. The Apex encounter for Dxun may be on the harder end of veteran, but having a final boss be a little more challenging is appropriate. But it should be. It's also going to be the operation that leads with the new expansion, so it should be accessible.
Okay. Perfect. What is or was your favorite boss that you designed up to today?
Designed.
Yep, that you designed.
I like that the part that you designed surprised you.
Well, I mean, it's your favorite boss in Tor. It's your favorite boss that you made in Tor, which requires me to first remember all
Well,
the things.
your favorite boss could be Tithe, but you didn't make it. So, because if you make the boss, that means you're making the mechanics and you're giving all of us the
Headaches.
and the. Oh no! What are we supposed to do now? Like, who knew you had to go click on that bridge thing on the hut?
I will tell you that my favorite boss that Matt ever designed actually has nothing to do with the encounter, but it's the Revan fight. Because I remember seeing Matt had this crazy whiteboard where he had written down I don't know, it looked like someone had a mental breakdown and wrote on the wall with chalk. Like, it was awesome. Like, you walk by like, Matt, what is that? And he's like, oh, I'm working out the Revan mechanics. And I'm like, I'm never doing this fight because I'm not going to be able to do it. That's what I can see from this whiteboard. It's crystal clear to me. There's math and hieroglyphics, and I'm not doing it.
Right.
That sounds awesome.
I mean, it's true that Revan is always going to be a special encounter to me just because it's so heavily ingrained in BioWare's identity with such a significant character, and the encounter itself also came together really well, and a lot of people seem to respond very positively to it. So, I mean, that's a pretty strong candidate. It's kind of being forced to pick between your children kind of question. Monsters.
Well, we'll come back to it.
All
right.
Dwell on a little bit. So, Matt, I have a very important question to ask you.
And this is for everybody in the whole world that wants to know.
So, do you really actually like Swedish fish that much, or are you just trolling us all the time?
They are heaven's gift to Earth. They are utterly delicious.
Okay.
With that kind of answer, do they know if you're trolling or not yet? That's the.
Well, I mean, isn't that the art of trolling? Is you never
Yes.
really know.
That is
Exactly.
You're always trolling.
What is the most deviously or fun thing that you have designed in an operation?
So I guess that's maybe like, what is your favorite mechanic or something, or a little something you put in there that you
that you knew that it was going to mess everybody up, and
you
you
went-
just sat back.
It was like,
I
have
got
fun with
him.
that one.
Oh man, the water processing plant towards Skyva's encounter is pretty high on that list.
Jesus.
Yes.
The fact that there's just for no reason, there's one of Nahat's mines on the jump down through the the water piping there. I mean, that was just playful trolling.
Okay.
But that room, which we affectionately refer to as the toilet bowl.
Mm-hmm. The toilet bowl.
The toilet bowl.
The bridge boss.
Is the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. It has to be the Nightmare Bridge in Darvanis in Scum and Villainy. I've told a couple other people that story before, but that literally happened in the. So I was browsing the forums when we were back in 2.122 when we were going to be putting Nightmare Darvanis out, and someone said that was complaining about the bridge. Actually, they were just fill in the holes in the bridge. It's awful. And then the post right below it was, and we can only imagine what the bridge boss is going to be in Nightmare mode. And so I was looking back and forth between the two posts, and it was fill in the bridge, Nightmare boss on bridge mode, or bridge boss in Nightmare mode. And I was that's brilliant. So I asked the then lead of the operations team, it's hey, can I do this? And he thought it was funny. We all thought it was funny, but being the responsible parental figure that he was, he said we probably have more important things to do at that time. So then fast forward a couple days later, when all of the dev shards that we could do future content work on for the Dread Ops were down due to maintenance, and I was hey, I
got some time on my hands.
I got some time on my hands. I could do that because they sent us an email. It's don't expect the shards to be up for another hour and a half. And he's if you can do that in an hour and a half, you can do it. And so
The lesson here is don't let Matt have time on his hands.
So just keep him working constantly. Give him a whiteboard. Give him some ridiculous boss to make, and tell him to go.
Yep.
And as soon as he finishes that one, have him make the next one.
Well, then you get Nahat.
We can't win. It's all just Matt.
Oh, and I'm just going to circle back to the beginning. For the record, Musco, you can invite Nick and I into those early testing things. You have the power.
Yeah, it's
I
true.
would love to fight 70 ads and die miserably.
I guess I did set myself up for that, didn't I?
You can.
Because
There's ways you guys can share that with us.
That is true.
We'll sign whatever documents we need to sign.
And I have two teams, one on the imp side, which is the correct side, and then the pub side, that would be happy to come along and test all of that stuff with you very privately.
Noted.
Noted. Moving on.
Back at the ranch. So
People say those kinds of things, but I don't think a lot of people know what it's like to test an encounter in an early stage on a dev shard.
Yeah,
Everything half works.
Yeah. Yeah,
Can
it's
you
a mix of the most frustrating thing on Earth and the most hilarious thing on Earth.
It's Bosch just died. Oh, because his AoE hit himself, and then got in a multiplier loop.
Right. Yeah. It's nonsense. Anyway.
But we'd still love to do it.
Yep.
So, will the new operation drop better gear than the older operations like Gods from the Machine did during 5.0? And how will that work with Spoils of War?
So I can probably answer that question.
Sure.
Go for it.
The answer is it's a little complicated because everything in the game technically all drops the same gear. There is no such thing as I run the hardest content to get the best gear. But harder content gives you much better likelihood to get better gear. So the answer to your question is kind of. Running Dxun will very likely be the best way for you. If all you are focused on is getting the best gear in the game, the fastest way possible, running the newest content on the hardest difficulty, so veteran mode Dxun at launch, will probably be the fastest way to get that gear. Now, again, you could run something else to get that gear, but you will do it at a slower rate.
So, because in the 5.0 series, I remember story mode Gods from the Machine dropped 242, where the rest of the story mode ops dropped 236 gear.
Correct. That will not work that way. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
That happens in the specific context where there's an operation that's releasing after that was a post 5.0 operation, so it's arguably appropriate for it to have just higher tier gear drops because players have already gotten previous tiers of gear, and you should start building from the current foundation as opposed to what the foundation was a year ago.
Okay.
But since Dxun is going to be in 6.0, it's right out the gate with everything.
Yep.
All right. Will there be a chance of longer raid lockouts in 6.0?
Ooh. So we had a lot of conversations about lockouts very specifically.
Do you hear this coming, Nick? We're
Yeah,
getting the
for-
corporate answer. It's coming.
No. I have specific things I'm going to tell you. Don't worry. Is when as soon as you hear me inhale, are you just like, well, I'm not going to listen to this answer?
That's exactly what it is.
That's fair. That is fair. No, so we did. We actually had really long conversations about lockouts very specifically for one, because we landed on one very likely change. Matt, do you want to tell them what we're likely going to change in 6.0?
A very likely change is that story mode difficulty will no longer have lockouts.
Wow.
The intention there is that we're trying to make it. People have said that it already existed this way, where story mode was laughably easy. But if you understood the quantity of our players that play story mode ops, that I would tend to disagree. That they probably could maybe be a little easier. So our goal is to make story mode ops very accessible to players, with the intention that if you want to just log on and just play ops all night, you can do that. We're not going to stop you from playing story mode ops on loop effectively if that's what you want to do. If ops are like, it is one of the things that made us arrive at that is if you look at any type of content in the game, you want to play war zones. Well, you could literally log on, start playing war zones, and play till you don't want to play anymore, and then log off, and then do that again tomorrow. But you can't technically do that with operations because you could run out of lockouts. So
if we wanted to fight Sparky 100 times in one night, we can do that.
Yep. So the other half of that conversation was if we're making it a lot easier to run story, or making it easier to run story mode, allowing you to run them on loop, that also means we won't save your progress in story mode. So you can't run 2 bosses and then, try to come back the next night to continue the op. So the conversation came up of, well, what if for veteran and master modes, we allowed players to extend their lockouts to extend another week or whatever, whatever that might be. So it is being investigated. I know. I don't believe it is going to happen in 6.0, but I know that
a much more complicated adjustment to try and make.
Yeah, but it is something that we have absolutely talked about doing.
Okay, can I just ask why, if it's more complicated to extend let's say 2 weeks, because that's, my teams always talk about that. If, because we're all busy, right? We can only run once a week. So if it extended to 2 weeks, why is that much harder to do than just getting rid of all the lockouts in story mode?
It's probably a very complicated answer that I wouldn't even be able to give you because I'm not an engineer, but I think it is removing a lockout is take away some checkboxes that says this content has lockouts, kind of.
A little more than that. Yeah.
Right. But it's a simpler change, whereas extending lockouts is functionality that doesn't exist. So we would have to entirely build that functionality, build a UI to support the fact that you can extend lockouts. There's a lot more elements that would go into building that.
Okay, so it's not necessarily it's more of a coding and designing issue than a theoretical implication on people getting additional gear or trying to exploit the system to get an advantage or something like that. It's more of this is going to be technically using a lot more resources than removing the lockouts from story mode would.
Correct. I think philosophically, for the most part, the team would all be on board with allowing players to extend their lockouts. It's just a question of when do we have the time and resources in our schedule to build that functionality.
Okay, that makes sense.
I ran a simple test for the story lockouts. I ran a simple test, and I started stripping story lockouts out of one of the operations. Submitted the changes, reloaded the UI, and the little bronze medals disappeared out of the UI, and it seemed like everything was working. So, 90% sure. The term we have, plan of record.
Right.
90% sure that it's not going to be a problem to do that, but when I actually start to make those changes and hard commit to them, and then QA gets a glance at them, the wheels may just blow off the wagon with other knock-on effects and bugs created by that we didn't foresee.
Yeah. So
it's
standard disclaimer.
time.
Yeah, so standard disclaimer. It's something we would like and currently plan to do for Onslaught, but when rubber hits that road, to Matt's metaphor, if the wheels blow off, it may not happen. But that is our current plan.
Okay,
Great.
sounds good. So, how will the new level scaling work with operations? Will it be similar to planetary level sync, and will it apply to veteran and master mode operations also?
So the first part of your question is yes, mostly. It is similar to level sync, but it works under the hood. It works a bit differently.
It's more targeted.
Yeah, it's more targeted. Where the team actually is tweaking dials to balance different story mode ops differently. So yeah, you're going to go back. You're going to be level 50 when you're running story mode, EV and KP, and the balance. But like, for example, we may be level syncing you differently in EV than we are in KP, depending on balance and difficulty and stuff. I'm trying to remember how it's going to apply to veteran and master though. Are those also syncing you?
They also have targets, but it's like we use the term level scaling, but it's actually gear and stat scaling. So we can target different item ratings that we scale you to.
Okay.
And so part of that process is going to be correctly targeting the various operations in the appropriate gear context, so that they play. The goal is to get them to play roughly as they did.
Mm-hmm.
Since you're stat scaled down and you're effectively going to be as powerful as you're ever going to get when engaging in that content, there's an interesting discussion to be had. Should you slightly over-gear the player as if they had everything from that tier?
Yep. Should
you put them at the point where they're in a progression set of stats relative to the difficulty? That's more of a design philosophy question that we're going to be poking around with on PTS. Like, we've been tweaking relentlessly the specific numbers and
the
methodology
PTS
that we're using. Yeah, on PTS.
Yeah.
Today's PTS that goes up today is going to have it's going to feel drastically different.
That goes up tomorrow.
Oh, it goes up tomorrow.
Yeah.
See, I was hoping that we were going to catch Musco because he said tomorrow.
Nope, it's tomorrow. To be fair, to Matt's point, we are pulling the build today, so but it will go up tomorrow. It should go up tomorrow.
Great. So all right. So you mentioned earlier that story mode is going to be a wee bit easier, right? So
That's the goal.
So that's the goal. That's our goal. So what does that mean for the veteran mode, or as I call it, hard mode, and then the nightmare modes? Is nightmare going to still stay insane, where veteran mode is maybe going to get easier? How is that going to work?
That is the golden question. That's the sort of.
Well, so I'm going to break this
all
down.
of this is that there's story mode, even veteran mode. There's two competing goals. For story mode, it's accessibility, but it's also, in theory, providing people with a framework familiarity with an encounter that then should better equip them to try and beat the encounter in veteran mode. The easier you make story mode, the further from veteran mode it gets, so you succeed in your first goal to do worse at your second.
Right.
Now, you can kick that can further down the road and make veteran mode a little more accessible, but then you get further from master mode or nightmare, depending on your preference.
Yes.
Can
we just call it nightmare for the rest of the day?
Part of the reason internally we do still call it that is because all of the tools internally still refer to it as hard and nightmare.
Okay, so let's just call it out now. In 6.0, it is now going to be
Nightmare mode.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, there are a ton of strings in the game and other localized assets.
Yeah, I think we've actually, Keith has definitely talked about this before as well, that if it was that easy, we would have done it already, because we all also kind of just think it should go back to being called Nightmare. It's just a really weirdly and surprising large amount of work to change that back. Not to say it won't happen someday, but we're with you. We understand.
Okay. All right.
Believe me, we understand.
So this is kind of this is my own kind of personal question here. Matt, when you're building an operation, how do you go about making changes for each difficulty? Do you start with nightmare mode and then nerf it to make it story and then add some more stuff to make it hard mode? How do you go about the difficulty in the beginning?
Scaling them like the mechanics to make them harder or easier for each one.
That actually changes based on the individual encounter. The process doesn't change, but the central balance point does. What I mean by that is most encounters start from a core mechanic or some other kind of central pillar thesis for an encounter. Like Ivella and Esne, it's the concept that they're twins, one's positive, one's negative, and that you have a thing that can let you switch between being immune to one of their two polarities of attacks. And some mechanics and gameplay kind of just would naturally flow from that core concept as you think about it in different ways that you can play with it and manipulate it that would make players react or create puzzles. And so when you have the sort of initial low-hanging fruit, kind of more obvious mechanics that fall off of that, the way I describe it is you wind up with an encounter that naturally rests at a certain difficulty level. Tithe, for me, naturally rests around veteran.
Okay.
The mechanics come together completely around the veteran tier of difficulty in terms of you have the waves of ads, you have the rage management, you can let the heals or the shields through, at a cost to help you manage rage, but you have to be on top of dealing with all the ads and don't cleave the ads because,
then you're going to make Tithe mad.
Right. And then in those cases, the encounter kind of is designed to most directly answer your question as asked, that encounter kind of is designed at veteran, and then story mode simplifies certain interactive elements, and nightmare mode seeks to add a couple new twists to it.
Just a couple? I mean, come on.
There's three differences: nightmare Tithe versus veteran Tithe. The energy sweep is a broom now with the knockback. Adds and rage if you leave them alive for more than double the summoning cooldown. And I already forgot what I was going to say. Oh, and the ad summoning position is entirely randomized. I guess the 8 ad waves are there, and then there's the magma poops that spawn when you...
We're up to 5 now.
Yeah, Nick, do you hear what he's saying?
I think so.
If you go to veteran Tithe, you're dead.
Or nightmare Tithe?
Yeah, nightmare Tithe.
Yeah.
So
hey, speak.
But Nahut, for example, is an encounter that naturally wants to be nightmare.
Yes.
The nightmare version, you're fighting the invisible god of assassination, who needs to be, to that description, incredibly lethal in the attacks that he does. He is invisible. You're fighting him in a minefield of invisible mines in a black hole generator that's in the process of starting up. And the only way you can see the boss is by players to manage this other object that can reveal him that you have to pass around, and don't pass it to the boss, otherwise he'll whip it back at your face.
That's a good old candle.
All of the interplays between that, they kind of naturally want to be making you do things that are nightmare tier in terms of just coordination and communication.
That fight took us a while to beat.
And so that encounter was even the veteran mode of it was simplifying some of the sort of natural mechanics features that came out of the core idea for the encounter. Sorry, that was a pretty long-winded answer, but it's a very good question.
No, that's great. Speaking of, it's a perfect segue. So speaking of nightmare mode, will there be a nightmare version of Temple of Sacrifice, Ravengers, Eevee, and KP added to the game in 6.0?
Nope.
Well, see, that's such a fantastic question. All right, so now...
And fantastic answer.
I mean, yeah, and an even better answer.
That's exactly what we wanted.
Wanted to give you some time back from the last.
Well, no,
answer,
but that's perfect. So, on to the Dxun stuff. Can you talk more about how story, veteran, and master mode operations will be scaled in 6.0 with the level increase to 75?
Yeah, so again, favorite term, plan of record. We're toying around with the idea of putting ops back into their original context. So the older legacy ops are going to come out to the highest level that they were ever naturally at, which means that really Assation is the special case there. That would be at its 2.0 balance target instead of its 1.6 balance target because it was brought up to 55. And then have players level or power scaled to an appropriate level to run through those, which would make Dxun the only level 70, the only operations you would be running where you're actually character level 75 as you're going through it. Like I said, we're playing around with that idea. We have initial experiments on PTS, EV, and KP have some initial runs at seeing what that stat scaling will look like. We can gauge how effectively it will work. That plan is attractive for a couple reasons. Every time you rescale levels with an expansion, there's a slight drift in the balance. Even if you keep everything all the player ratings like relatively the same, there's always some tweaks that happen under the hood. So that every time we just take an operation from 60 to 65 to 70 to 75, using its same relative numbers, it drifts a little further and further off of its original intended base. I mean, people have noticed, when I'm at cantinas and community events and stuff like that, there's always a couple people that ask questions about, like, hey, what about this particular encounter that gets harder and harder every expansion? And the reason for that incremental increase in difficulty is because there's just a balance drift between different level brackets. And so in theory, if we can scale things back down to the original level bracket, we can get them good, and then they'll stay good, for eternity, because they're in their correct state. As opposed to, there's an extensive amount of rework that's required every time there's an expansion. We try to scale everything up. So there's a lot that's attractive about keeping things, to getting things to a good point, and then knowing that they'll be able to stay there and still be relevant, because even though the plan is, even with those scaled operations, when you're running them, any gear that those encounters uniquely dropped historically that is still considered relevant to the current game will still drop. And you're also going to have drops scaled to you as your non-scaled player level. So if you're 75 and you're running these ops, even though your power is scaled, you will still be getting gear that is relevant to you. So we can keep the encounters in a balanced place where they're good, and we can also make them relevant to you in terms of rewards to engage with them still in the later expansions. Like, there's a lot of good there, and so we want to see if we can get that to work. And so the TLDR on that is try it out on PTS and give us tons of feedback, because that's helpful, and that's what PTS is for.
Well, I tell everybody, people who complain about the game or complain about anything, when you have an opportunity to test something to help, it's your own fault. And you are not allowed to complain about it if you don't go on the PTS and test it.
Right.
Yeah, one of the things that we've tried to do a lot more of, because I do understand, especially in some countries that have internet caps and stuff, the idea of downloading 50 gigs or whatever our PTS is can be problematic. So one of the things we've tried to do a lot more of is, even for people who don't want to take the time or can't take the time to download and play it, is to try to post as much of the information as we can in written form on the PTS forum, so that you can even just give us your napkin math gut check us. So I'm like, oh, I hate this idea, this is terrible, or no, that sounds cool, or just change this thing and it's great all of a sudden. This way we can try to cover it from both sides, because I understand that some people may not be able to access PTS or have the time or internet to access PTS, but hopefully we try to remove as many of those barriers as possible. So tell us what we're doing well and tell us what we're not doing well, so we can make it all great.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, sometimes those back of napkin theory crafts, they're actually more useful than you might think. There was at least one time where, in this current PTS cycle, the player was like, hey, wait a minute, can't you, if you combine this ability, and this tactical, can't you hit, just kind of cruise at 75% damage reduction? And we're like, oh.
Sure can.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Wow, that's embarrassing. Let's,
Right. How many boss encounters are there going to be in the Dxun operation?
Dxun will be a 5 lockout operation, sort of the standard size.
What is the name of the first boss, and can you tell us about it?
So we can't tell you the name yet, because it's still we're still waiting for some check marks from people that
Ready?
that is the name.
It'll be the name. It's the one.
It's only us talking.
It will. You're right. You know what? Since no one else will hear this, I will tell you the name. I can't tell you.
Let's say codename Cherry Kefis.
So, I'm going to just build on that. There was in the live stream, there was a boss you showed that kind of had a lobster claw at one hand. Mm-hmm. Can we confirm that is one of the bosses in the operation?
Oh, interesting. No, but I'll tell you what I can confirm is in the live stream
There are bosses.
there are bosses. Yeah. So when we did the pan from the fly through, like we were showing the fly through of Dxun, we ended showing like the dinosaur guy with the mohawk on his back. My description is very accurate. That is the first boss of Dxun.
Oh.
And
The rest of what you saw, just so I'm not just purely agitating you, the rest of what you saw from San Diego, those are all concepts of bosses that are in various levels of process or may never see the light of day, etc. So you'll just have to wait and see.
All right.
There's cherry, there's sour apple, there's blueberry, and there's grape.
The Kefis Rangers?
well, so it's confirmed. Kefis is coming back.
Did he ever leave?
No. Is he gonna? So he started off as Kefis, and then he was Kefis the Undying, and now he's gonna be Kefis the Drunk.
Now he's the Kefis really not dying.
Really not
Extra
dying.
not
Kefis,
dying?
I'm not dead yet.
Kefis not dead yet.
He guards a bridge.
So, would you like question number 2?
Yeah, sure.
What made you guys choose Dxun? And what led the team to create a Circa-focused encounter?
I was kind of touched on this a little earlier. When we knew obviously we wanted to do an operation for 6.0, and when we were trying to figure out what it would be, we decided that we kind of wanted to try and do something. It was able to have a little more fun of a tone, and we kind of knew that we wanted to do it on Dxun just because it's an environment. Since we're already on Onderon, it's an environment that's touched on in the extended universe, and I suppose Legends.
Sure.
And it's like it's right there. And
Right.
So it seemed like a pretty good choice. And because conceptually it's cool. It's a moon that orbits so close that the atmospheres merge and creatures can actively cross between the bridge that's created. Obviously, that's physics-wise bankrupt, but
But great storytelling.
it's great storytelling. So we decided to have it there, and then when we decided to involve Zerka and had worked
It
out,
just made everybody smile.
yeah, and especially we sort of I remember the kickoff meeting where I was pitching the operation concept and just sort of the narrative overview of what was going on, and the top level absurdity of it seemed to delight people. So there's a lot of opportunity for Zany when you're dealing with Zerka and a facility on a secret science research facility on a moon that is known for having the most savage beasts. And what sorts of things would you do there with a research facility, you might imagine, and then what could possibly go wrong that might require player intervention?
All right.
And so
That does
so,
sound
yeah,
very
that
fun.
kind of it was. This particular selection was kind of narratively driven, and I think this operation is going to wind up being one of the more, we just got done recording dialogue. We have a lot more voiceover transmissions associated with this operation than we have with any other. I think by at least a factor of 2. So we're trying to do a little more storytelling within the operation itself, and I may be so bold as to claim that I think a lot of the dialogue will be found funny by players, as was our goal, hopefully. So I think it'll be a thing to look forward to. I mean, obviously the proof of the pudding is in the eating, so we shall see.
Sure.
Great. So Gods was incredibly mechanics heavy and very hard even for players who are used to doing operations, which I think was kind of the goal there. Between Karaga's Palace and Gods from the Machine, where will Dxun sit?
Put KP down there? Well,
KP has the floor?
Yeah, I guess. I have flashbacks from 1.x days of trying to explain heavy fabricator to people. So, but
It's just Tower of Hanoi. Press a button.
yeah, oh god.
I just explained it.
There's an argument to be made that it was kind of irresponsible of us to put that encounter in the game ever, but it was kind of a matter of tradition because there's always a Towers of Hanoi puzzle in Bioware game. It kind of had been tradition, and so someone was like, "I'm gonna make Towers of Hanoi the raid boss fight." point.
Right.
And then that's where we wound up. And it's delightful in its own absurdity. But more to your question, I think this is probably going to land somewhere around Darvanis. Scum and Villainy.
Okay.
I'm guessing it's not going to... We're not trying to go as far back as EVKP. Those were a different time. We had a less experienced player base overall.
Sure.
So it's not appropriate to necessarily walk back that far, but we're kind of aiming for a middle of the road, which is, I realize that's wishy-washy, but to me,
not really.
I think that's like the Scum and Villainy seems to be about where that
that's great.
Point rests.
I like to hear that. How soon after Dxun is released will you create another operation? And would you be willing to release one boss at a time like you did with Gods?
The first answer is an amount of time will pass before the next operation.
Okay.
Matt for the second half?
Sorry, what was the second half of that?
Stay.
Would you be willing to...
one boss at a time again.
Yep.
I don't have any philosophical opposition to doing that. When you do something like that, you wind up creating a much more involved operation on the back end, just because when every release is its own feature, every boss then has to be larger. I mean,
Sure.
We knew what we wanted to do with Gods from the Machine, so it was appropriate for us to do it that way because we knew we were going to be able to hit those marks on the various bosses. But
I feel like in general our goal would be to try to do full ops as opposed to... I mean, if we were going to do individual bosses, I would imagine we would shift more towards layer bosses or something something like that, and then try to move more towards just doing full operations.
Yeah, what did you guys think of the Queen? If I might be the interviewer.
So,
Sure.
I personally, I enjoyed the Queen. I thought... So, this is going to be a loaded question because both my teams are hard mode teams, but a lot of the players are Nightmare players. So, the Nightmare players tell us how easy the hard mode Queen is, but my hard mode teams have not beaten the veteran mode Queen, and the only way I know that they do it is you're bringing 5 DPS or 6 DPS, 1 tank, 1 healer, and you guys got to manage the ads really well, which my team just hasn't been there yet. So I like the encounter. I think it's incredible, but I think it's that the difficulty spike from story mode to hard mode is insane, and because in December our story mode ops team jumped to hard mode, and this is going to be, sorry Nick, I'm going to bogart this whole.
Go right ahead.
Yeah,
You have way more experience with this than me, so.
I feel the difficulty spike between story mode and hard mode is insane. Our first op for hard mode was Dread Fortress. And people are like, well, why would you ever do that? You should go to the easier ones. And I said, well, because if you can beat Dread Fortress on hard mode, the rest of them should be a little easier until you get to, obviously, Ravager's Temple of Sacrifice and Gods from the Machine, which it took us, I'm not even going to tell you how many months for us to beat it, but if you follow us on Twitter, you'll know that it took us a very long time to beat that up on hard mode. And yes, it has a lot to do with who you're playing with, but when you take 8 story mode players and jump into a hard mode, that difficulty spike is insane.
It is.
That's
and
why...
even with that difficulty difference, it's still trivially easy to, the core of the Nightmare player body.
Yes.
The skill... The skill and performance differences are so large that there's no overlap for the balance target between what a Nightmare player won't find too easy and what will be possible ever for a veteran player to complete.
So I have somebody on our team, and she is a Nightmare Raider, and she's definitely awesome, and she plays all 3 roles, and we won't call her out here, Lauren, but she told us how easy the veteran mode or hard mode ops are, and I disagreed completely, but then when you circle yourself around with veteran hard mode players or Nightmare players, it is easy. And after you beating, that Dread Fortress on hard mode, it got easier to beat all the rest of them. But the difficulty spike is big. And my concern with hearing you guys say story mode is going to be easier, it concerns me that veteran mode or hard mode is going to be really hard to make that jump. And going with that, I would love in 6.0 if you guys could bring back the highlighted hard mode of the week, because back when that was a thing, that got our teams to try a hard mode op, because you beat the story mode and you're like, oh, let's go try it. But now you don't even try it because you're not incentivized to try it. And if you and this is coming from a hard mode player. I do not do Nightmare. I can't beat the veteran mode queen. I've never beat the Colossal Monolith on story mode. So, because there's, or what is it? World Breaker? Which one is it? Whatever. The instanced one.
Sure.
So my big concerns are, you have to incentivize players to do it, because I understand that, let's say, if I had to guess, let's say 16% of the SOTOR community are raiders or ops players. That's my guess. 3% of that are Nightmare. And maybe 12%, 8% is hard mode. So how do you get the rest of those people to jump into hard mode, incentivize them, and at the same time make it so that if they beat Nephra, that is like winning an op in itself, and they get extra rewards for the highlighted hard mode of the week. Yes, people will abuse that, who are the Nightmare Raiders, but at the end of the day, the Nightmare Raiders are going to get the best gear anyways, so who cares if they exploit it? You're not getting...
That's fair feedback. That's fair.
All right. But okay, so I've been circling around this at all times. I'm really concerned with hearing you guys say story mode is going to be easier. Now, if you tune down veteran mode a little bit, and then how does that scale to the Nightmare? Because Nightmare players are going to expect it to be really, really, really hard.
Yeah, I think part of that will be so all of the concerns you're raising are very valid. The thing that I would say is play it on PTS, because there's a question mark. Matt may know, but there's a question mark in there of, by us using some of like our I'm using air quotes, level sync for operations, is it going to whittle down some of the power creep that has fallen into some of those operations, which has certainly likely impacted veteran in some instances?
Mm-hmm.
Has that balance fallen into better line with where it's supposed to be, which may be easier than it is today? The opposite might be true. We may have accidentally made them harder in some cases. And so I think at the end of the day, your concerns are super valid, and there's something we would want to try to account for. It's just going to be a question of having the people play it and tell us, oh, hey, Dread Fortress Veteran is now literally impossible. What have you done? Please, God, why? Or then you play a different op and you go, oh, actually, this is entirely beatable now on Veteran. This is perfect. It's where it should be. So I think that's where we're going to need some of that input and feedback from you guys on where that difficulty fell.
Okay.
So, next question would be, will specific gear drop from specific bosses in the operation?
So I believe the answer in 6.0 is no, but it is definitely our intention that will happen over time. So the thing that we've tried to express as often as we can is that part of the biggest benefit of Spoils of War is that this is the beginning of our itemization changes, not the end. So our goal is absolutely in updates going forward, we will continue to introduce new set bonuses, new tactical items. And I know the goal of that will be that in the future, we want to try to either, one, create unique tacticals. So maybe we make a tactical that only drops off of the eyeless during the Reckle event, or, as we introduce Master Mode Dxun, maybe there'll be some tacticals or something that drop from there. So, but I do believe, I could be wrong, but I believe there will not be specific gear pieces dropping off of specific enemies in 6.0, but the goal would be that they can thereafter. And one caveat that I will put out is that even in an instance where there is gear that only drops off of a specific boss, so again, let's say we introduce a tactical that only drops for off of the Reckle event, that will still be possible to be gotten by all players, via the secondary mechanisms of getting gear. So it's still possible you could probably get them from either renown crates or the vendor that you will be able to roll on specific slots. I believe you'll still be able to get them from those sources. So the intention is that we will incentivize specific places to have specific drops going forward in the future, but you'll still technically be able to get them anywhere.
Okay, I know time is running out, and I just want to. There's two questions. First one is, will there be flex scaling in 6.0?
Nope.
Okay, and last one. Have you ever considered adding special, very specific achievements for ops? For example, clear an entire op on nightmare difficulty with a specific group makeup, or clear hard mode Revan without any group members dying.
2 aberrations, or whatever.
Or those are just examples.
Yeah. So, yes, we've toyed around with those ideas before. It comes up now and again. Historically, the reason we hadn't done them is because starting to do that kind of, at least the feeling was at the time, that kind of implies that you need to go back and add it to everything once you start to debut that kind of thing. That it begs you to go back and update all the other things with those kinds of achievements. We poked around with just a couple of those in Gods, like the Dodge Claw achievement for Isaacs and things like that. It's not something we're opposed to doing going forward. It does take time to set those kinds of things up because you need to add some additional tracking to the encounter that isn't otherwise part of the scripting. But to answer your question, we have considered doing that before, and those types of things might wind up appearing in Dxun. A lot of it comes down to time and opportunity. In terms of achievements specifically about group composition, I could say that's probably not a thing we would ever do because we don't want to get into forcing certain classes into.
That's a good answer. I'm going to quote Musco. That's a great question. I mean, a great answer.
It is. It honestly is. Yeah, I was going to say, this is one of those cases where I could tell you the kind of place where community would weigh in to be like, I would push against doing something like group compositions because although it is a super cool thing that people could chase after, it is also excluding a lot of players because they're like, I need all Marauders in this group. Well, I don't play a Marauder. I guess I can never get that achievement.
Why would you never play a Marauder? That is the greatest class ever.
Because you respect yourself.
No. That is the greatest class ever. So last thing is, who do I have to talk to at BioWare to try to get the Working Class Nerds logo in the Dxun operation on a wall in a building?
Interesting.
I would love that. Or even all the content creators' logos throughout a building. Almost
Somewhere.
like we're working for Zerka.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
We could send it to our non-existent suggestion box, mailbox. It's
Well, see, I do have a great suggestion box. It's called Daniel Steed, the intern.
The intern.
Danny. Excuse me. I believe his formal title is Danny the Intern. I believe is what we discussed.
All right, Danny.
Yes.
And make sure the last thing. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for coming on.
And
thank you guys for so much for having us on.
And please keep Chuck's Bucks, please.
Do it
for everyone.
What happened with that? To be honest, I don't know. It was honestly, no joke. The conversation of Chuck's Bucks versus Charles Points became a real debate that happened repeatedly for days in the office. People would just walk by and just yell like Chuck's Bucks, and
Chuck's Bucks.
It was out of control. But then it all just died. So I don't know whatever happened with that. I'll find out.
Okay, so you guys,
responsible producer type was like, "Hey,
yeah, that seems true."
I'm sure you guys got to get back.
Any of those because it certainly isn't Keith. So I don't know where that would have happened.
Audacity says we have 4 minutes, but hey, do you guys have any questions for us?
Yeah. So have you guys played on PTS?
Yes,
I have not, but Marcus has.
What has been your impression of tacticals and set bonuses?
I think it's fun. I think it adds a new element to the metagame and, what do you guys call it? Min-maxing? I think I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be really fun to see it work in PvP. Now, I don't really PvP. I do regs once in a while, but I think where it's going to make a big difference is in PvP because everybody's going to be max level. And if you have, in my case, if I'm always ferocious, that's going to make it a lot easier for me to kill things all the time because I don't really need to worry about the armor penetration. I just need to kill as hard as I can. I'm interested to see the amplifiers and how all that's going to work, because to be honest with you, it's really confusing to me.
Sure.
But as I play more, I'll let you know in my report, because there's definitely some questions there. We're trying to put a group together to do an operation, because that's pretty much all I do. I'll do the story on a couple characters, but really it'll be Dxun as soon as it's released. So I want to know what these tacticals are going to do for myself and my team, and try to find those best compositions, I guess we could say, for the best tactical for us.
Cool.
Can't wait for the combat team to throw a curveball and they're like, oh no, we were just trying to got a couple of these tacticals and just completely counterbalance targets.
Yep, it's entirely. There's already some stuff where when I saw some list for one of the because we'll put up the bounty hunter stuff. When I saw one of the bounty hunter tacticals, I was like, are you actually insane? Do you have any idea how broken this is? And I got to play with it, and it feels really strong. So
that's awesome.
That's what I'm really intrigued to see is the there's so much stuff that I've looked at for tacticals and set bonuses just personally as someone who plays, where I'm like, this is broken, right? This is just out of control broken. And there's been a lot of players too being like, how in the world do you possibly balance this chaos? And it'll be fun. That's what PTS is for. Balance the chaos.
And just for the record, if anybody's listening to this and you do go into an operation and you see a guy and he starts messing with you in the game, that's Matt. He can make you really big and he can make you really small. And he does funny things, and it's kind of weird seeing him run around the platform of a boss fight. And
it isn't a hacker. It is Matt.
Yeah, and he's just trolling you.
Allegedly.
Cannot confirm or deny any rumors that it is Matt.
It's not like the character is actually literally my name.
Right. Yep.
All right.
Well,
thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
What are you guys talking about in here?
Find out next episode of Working Class Nerds.